Good morning, everybody. We are so excited to be here with all of you today. I'm Summer Gathercole. I am the Managing Director of SHG Advisors, which is coordinating and managing the Lift Academy. We're really excited to talk to you about motivational interviewing today, and you all submitted some really great questions, so we'll do our best to get through as much of them as possible. Would love to encourage all of you to please add your name and affiliation in the chat box, just so that we all have a good chance or a good sense of who's here today. A couple of housekeeping reminders before we jump in. One, everybody's muted upon entry, and that's really just to help us minimize the background noise. Certainly, if you have questions, you can raise your hand. Don't forget to turn yourself off mute so that we can hear you. You can raise your hand to ask questions. You can put questions in the chat box, whatever you feel most comfortable. And this meeting is being recorded. It will be posted on our resource page that you can see here. We post all of our virtual assemblies, our learning circles on our resource page, so that if you're not able to stay for the whole time today, you can go back and finish watching the recording if you'd like. I did want to just make a quick note that if you go to the resource page, you will see that we are still revising and kind of fine-tuning our curriculum for 2026. We are still going to continue to focus on housing outcomes, of course, and staying focused on kind of all of our mission to help people achieve stable housing. Just given some of the recent changes, we want to be mindful of that, and we want to make sure that you are getting from the Lift Academy what's most helpful and most relevant for all of you, while still staying focused on those housing outcomes. So we will be posting our new curriculum in 2026, and we'll be sure to let everyone know when it's posted, so that you can see what's coming up and hopefully go ahead and register. Okay, I am super excited today to introduce you to our guest, Dr. Linda Abadjian. I've known Linda for years, and I had to ask her last week how to pronounce her last name because I wasn't sure. But Linda has a PhD in clinical psychology and over 3 decades of clinical and research experience and evidence-based programs. She's a certified coach through the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaches and the International Coaching Federation. She's trained in integrative health, biofeedback, and leadership coaching, and has specific training in guided imagery and mind-body skills. She is also a member of the Motivational Interviewing Network of Trainers, which is why she's here today, and we're so excited to welcome her. Linda, I will hand it over to you.
Thanks so much, Summer. Thank you and welcome, everyone. And as this first slide says, this is going to be a very brief intro to motivational interviewing. And I'm happy to answer questions and things as we go along. And I will repeat this, but motivational interviewing always appears to be very intuitive and easy. And yet it gets really complex when you sit down and start working on it. So let's jump in. So in my integrative health spirit, I always like to start with a moment of gratitude. And this one just seemed appropriate for right now, for everything that's going on. So gratitude for small things, big things, and everything in between. So just take a couple seconds and just offer gratitude to yourself for being here and just everything that we have, big, small, and all the way around. Okay, next slide. So I'm going to start with the definition of MI, the official definition. And so it is defined as an evidence-based technique, a collaborative, client-centered counseling style that helps people find their own reasons and commitment to change behavior by exploring and resolving their mixed feelings, ambivalence about it. So I always love to start with this because we're going to break this down quite a bit. Next slide. So where does MI fit in? So MI has traditionally been used across healthcare, mental health, social work, criminal justice, creating cohesion in working environments really is seen a pretty big insurgence in like organizations and how MI can support people in working together. So next slide. So MI is real. So this one I want to just highlight that MI loves its acronyms. You're going to learn a lot of acronyms as I go through this. So this is our first one. MI is real. So it's very much about respect, empathy, and active listening. And these values really align with humanistic psychology. And MI was really truly developed as a technique. It is not a theory in and of itself, which I'll go over again. And yet it really follows the humanistic principles in that people that believing that people have self-actualization, in that there's an inherent tendency for each of us to grow and fulfill our unique potential. We have free will and choice, which is a big part of MI. Individuals have the capacity to make their own decisions and shape their own lives. Very holistic, focuses on the entire person, not just isolated behaviors. And I operate in the world that's called whole health. And our favorite saying is, it's not what's the matter with you. We ask what matters to you. Again, falling in line with this holistic view. MI is very present focused in that we focus on the here and now, current experiences. This isn't to say that we ignore experiences from the past, but that the focus with MI is very much about being in the moment. And inherent goodness. This is one of my favorite values of humanistic psychology, that believing people are fundamentally good and possess positive intentions. Next slide. So this is just a very brief agenda, what we're going to talk about today. We're going to go through an introduction to motivational interviewing, some theory and ideas on change, communication, key concepts, principles of MI, the 4 tasks, strategies and skills, guiding principles, and questions at the end. Next slide. So this is a real brief history of MI. So the first edition for motivational interviewing was put out in 1991, and it started with Bill Miller, and Steve Rolnick is also obviously they've worked on it together, but it started with Bill. Bill had started his psychologist career looking at substance use disorder, went up to Oregon, to the University of Oregon, and he was also very influenced by Carl Rogers' person-centered humanistic therapy. And what happened was he decided to do sabbatical and went to Norway and started to work with people that had substance use disorder. And everybody got like, wow, what are you doing? How are you getting them to change? What's going on? And he was like, I don't know. And so they started in all research fashion to look at what was happening. And what he observed was that arguing for making a change, like, oh my God, you need to stop drinking, created more defenses for maintaining that status quo, and that he didn't do that. So got all excited. They, did some research, published some things, and sent it off to the journal. I believe it was, I don't know if it was clinical or counseling psychology or whatever. And lo and behold, here was a newbie, Steve Rolnick, who was an anonymous reviewer of this first paper. And he also was starting his psychologist career in the addiction field, also looking at how to support people that individuals labeled as having difficult. Okay. And they were both very humanistic, and were like, how do we help people not sit around getting upset about what they're doing? And even to now, Steve's big focus is really using MI as helpfulness. And I'll talk about the 4th edition in a moment. But Steve is from South Africa, and now he's in Glasgow, and Bill is now in New Mexico. So next slide. So again, MI is not a theory, and nor do they say, a lot of people say, oh, your foundation is theory on change, but it's not. But still in the spirit of MI, it's very important to understand the Francesca and De Clemente stages of change. Because when we're working with people, it makes a difference to understand where they're coming from. So probably, many of you understand this. And when we meet people, a lot of times, at least in my experience, I'm meeting them in pre-contemplation or contemplation. So pre-contemplation is the initial change in which people might be unaware of the need to change and they don't have awareness of the problem. So it's just kind of like, nope, not there. Contemplation is when individuals acknowledge the need for change, but might be ambivalent about taking action. We're going to talk about ambivalence later. They might be weighing the pros and cons. Preparation is transitioning from contemplation, and individuals in this stage are ready to act. So they're ready to start taking some small steps. Action is the stage where there's actual implementation for plan changes, and individuals can modify their behavior, their environment, both, and everything that's going on. Maintenance comes after successful implementation of changes. And again, MI can go across this whole spectrum, but we tend to focus more on the initials. And then final it's called, termination, but we also talk about relapse and repeat. Because as we know, a lot of times make a good change. I'm not going to eat any, Christmas cookies during the week, only on the weekends. And then, Monday comes and half the cookies are gone. So here we go, right back, repeat. So this is kind of just a little background on theory of change. Any questions about that? And Summer, I can't see if someone raises their hand. So nope. Okay, next
Oh,
slide.
okay.
Oh, wait. Is there a question? Okay.
Yep.
So here are some different thoughts on change. Things do not change, we change. And this is from Henry David Thoreau, who was a American poet, a philosopher, and a naturalist, which I feel like he's appropriate for now. So this next quote is by Bill Miller and Terry Moyers. And Terry and Bill have worked together at the University of New Mexico for many, many years. She's also published quite a bit. And this was one of their nuggets for us after working in MI for so many years. People possess substantial personal expertise and wisdom regarding themselves and tend to develop in positive directions given the proper conditions and support. So again, this is something that coming off of, really hardcore substance abuse treatment and really kind of not giving people autonomy, so to speak, and feeling like we needed to tell them what to do and how to live their lives just didn't work. There are hundreds of articles looking at how some of the more rigid methods of working with people in substance use has not helped. And there's also quite a bit of evidence-based research in how motivational interviewing makes a difference. So one of the biggest studies that anybody can look up is called the MATCH study, MATCH. You can look that up, and that's got years and years and gobs of where they did a randomized control trial looking at very different methods for dealing with substance use and how MI came in, So this is what was interesting in that MI came in is really supporting people in understanding themselves and why they want to make changes, but not always is it that, oh, look, they stopped drinking immediately. So I think it's really important to realize that hopefully now it's a little bit different, but back in the day, people really they needed a real paradigm shift to understand that they were not going to get in trouble, they were not being shamed, they were not being ridiculed. And that took a lot for people that had been, anywhere from substance abuse treatment to prison to homeless and unhoused, like for not to feel this shame and to see that people were here to actually support and care about what was important to them. And then something I always say with people is that with MI, when we meet people considering change, we meet them where they're at, just wherever they're at on that stages of change that we were just going through. So Next slide. Communication. So this is foundational. Here's a definition of communication: the imparting or exchanging of information or news. And how this fits in with MI is that we focus very deeply on the foundation of deep listening. And if this were a longer presentation, we would all take turns practicing some of this, because we don't realize how much, when we're listening to someone, we're thinking about what we're going to say next. We're always on, like, okay, what do I need to be saying? What's my goal? Where am I supposed to take this person? What do I want them to do? And that deep listening is a very different experience, in which we abandon all the things in our own mind and really connect with what this person is saying. There are different types of communication, as you all know: verbal, nonverbal, visual, written. And since MI also focuses so much on being present, we really try to pick up on everything. So if someone's like, like this, and like, yeah, I'm going to do it, I'm going to make the changes, you can say, well, you know what? I'm picking up that there might have some different feelings about this. So all about listening in lots of different ways. Any questions about that? Okay, next slide. All right, so here's some examples of communication styles. So they break it down: directing, guiding, following. Now, MI tends to live in the middle with guiding. That being said, there are times when it can be directing and it can be following. It's important to realize that it's not rigid. And what we do is really open ourselves up to the individuals that we're working with, and also bringing awareness and understanding to where we're coming from. So certainly a parole officer is talking to someone differently than a social worker versus an addictions counselor. And so it's not that you're going to abandon the purpose in which you're interacting with someone, but it's about bringing awareness to where you're at, and what is the point, and what is the meaning for your interaction with this person. It's important. We can't, walk into the emergency room and someone needs stitches, and the ER doctor says, well, what do you think we ought to be doing about this situation? No, not going to work. So again, just being open to the fact that yes, MI is collaborative, encourages people, offers support, but it can also be very directive. Next slide. So again, more theories. Motivational interviewing gives insight on how to be with a person as they navigate what changes they want and how to make those changes. And even before we jump into the technique, it's important to honor each person just as they are. And with this foundation, MI offers several values, spirit and style, principles, and tasks. Next slide. So key concepts of MI. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, the first edition came out in 1991 and the latest edition came out in 2023. And there's been a decent shift in the book, in that it still continues to teach so many of the really important techniques and ways to do them that we'll touch on, but it's really focused quite a bit on the spirit of MI, and really looking at four main concepts or elements. So, and they're listed here. So the first one is partnership, which is about collaborating. And this is when a clinician and client work together as equals, valuing the client's expertise on their own life, and then talking about, different ways in which you can be supportive. Again, when we sit with individuals, we all have our own expertise coming at it from what it is. It's not about abandoning that. It's about really starting with honoring their expertise about who they are, their life situation, and where they'd like to go. And then we'll talk more about how we then guide in order to have an exchange in which we share some of our expertise. So the other part is about acceptance, and this is going to come up again so big. So respecting the client's absolute worth, their autonomy, their strengths, and accepting them without judgment. So if any of you circle around the world of mindfulness or mindfulness-based stress reduction, one of the biggest things is that we look at, it's about ourselves, and we look at ourselves without judgment, which is hard, because we're always spinning in our mind about, we should be doing this, should be doing that. But we just bring awareness to that and then make sure that it's not coming up in our interactions to support people. Compassion, again, actively prioritizing the client's best interests and really being attuned to what they're sharing about their experiences and values. Something that I've learned, you get really excited about being able to talk to people about their values. And then when you say, oh, what do you value? Lots of times you get people looking at you like, uh, I don't know. So in MI, we have a really fun, it's called the values exercise, where we have people go through a whole list of values, narrow it down, narrow it down. We don't walk around thinking about these things. And a lot of people that we interact with, whether it's in the mental health world or even in the health world, or in whatever, criminal justice, unhoused, anything, they're not used to being asked what's important for them or what do they value. And one of the keys is that when you're able to talk to somebody about what they value, then they come up with ways in which to make changes in their life that align with these values. So the next part of it is about evocation, which we're going to talk about. And this is about drawing out their own ideas, motivations, reasons for change, and recognizing that they have wisdom. Again, this isn't to say that we're not going to offer our guidance. We do, but we start with this. So this is where I stick in my word about why it matters to have these foundation concepts and values for MI. It keeps MI ethical. Without the spirit of MI, some of these techniques can feel manipulative, and this spirit kind of allows us to be genuine. And I was telling Summer and Carolyn earlier, it's like not very many. No, I don't know of any MI trainers that actually go out and train car salesmen, right? Because you can't twist things around. And again, it's bringing awareness to this, right? I mean, a lot of people are like, MIs, you're just trying to say that you're finding a different way to get people to do what you want. Well, we can own that we might want someone to take a different path in life. We can own that and just say, that's my opinion. Doesn't mean it has to be theirs, but the more awareness we bring to what we want out of an encounter, the easier it is to just remind ourselves, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, that's right. This is what they want, not me. So, and then finally, the empowerment. This is lots of times individuals that we work with are not feeling empowered in their lives. They're not feeling like they've got agency to do things that can put them on a different path. And so empowering people helps them recognize what they can do and the skills they have and the skills they have right now. Because even in working with people with MI, there is an expectation of change, right? We want someone to do something different. But if we just stop a moment and say, hey, look what you're doing right now. That's big. Just to begin with, that changes a shift in an individual. So I spoke a lot about these concepts, which I'll go into more detail, but any questions on any of those? Okay, next slide. Acceptance. So there's been a lot of research in MI on the theme of how acceptance can play a part in, guiding people towards change. And so acceptance, what we've learned is that when a person feels accepted for who they are and what they do, no matter how unhealthy or destructive, it allows them the freedom to consider change rather than needing to resist it. And that's hard. It's hard in lots of different areas when we're trying to support people into getting into healthier or less destructive. And where my mind goes is that there's been so much work with MI dealing with interpersonal violence. and the clinicians that use MI purely are absolutely incredible. And that they can wish something different for the individual that they're speaking with, but they know that that's not their decision. And I'm just at awe. And you can look up any kind of YouTube MI videos, but it's very pronounced when you can really accept someone for what they're done or they're doing. Next slide. Again, some more words. Some of these might be repeats, but we really look at the spirit of MI, which is collaborative, eliciting, empathic, helpful, individualized, non-judgmental, positive, present, respectful, warm, and friendly. So a lot of times people are like, oh my God, are we just going to be like their best friend? And it's like, no, it's not just that. It's about really, taking time to bring up the spirit of MI. And even before we sit with someone, to bring this spirit to ourselves. I'm assuming most everyone is working in the fields in which it's not easy. It's not always easy. Matter of fact, it's probably challenging a lot of the times. And so when we can be real with ourselves, with everything that's going on, and, recognizing what path we want to take to help someone, it just sets a foundation. Next slide. Okay, so here we're going to start with some of the principles of MI. Here's another acronym, RULE. These are the rules, although MI would never give rules, but here we go. So the R stands for resisting the writing reflex. No fixin'. And this is a very big deal. And each one of us has the writing reflex. We do. We want someone to we want to tell them how to get it right. We do. U is for understanding your client's perspective and motivations. Listen to your client with empathy, and empower your client, build confidence. So we have a little video that we like to share that really magnifies how hard it is not to fix.
It's just, there's all this pressure, And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me. And I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head. And it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I'll bet if we got that out of there.
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing.
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
See, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail out.
Now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's like there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. All of them.
Yeah, that sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. If you would just
don't
try to see things up.
So this is quite exaggerated, and yet we could all relate to it, right? What would we do? We would be like, get the damn nail out. It's so obvious. And a lot of times in working with people, we see that, don't eat a pint of ice cream every night if you want to lose weight, right? I'll tell you that right now. It's so easy. Nope. Hold it back. And as you guys all know too, it rarely works. We talk about that a lot, and that education is very important. Sharing resources and ideas is very important to people. But 90% of the time, that's not enough. education is not the answer to what supports people in making change. It's really about aligning with the values like we talked about. And that's what opens the door for people to make a difference. Next slide. So these are some examples of fixing behavior. When we hear ourselves pressuring, persuading, interrupting, well, let me show you the way, directing, rescuing. And that feeling of wanting to set someone right, wanting someone like, we have the information. If you listen to me and follow what I'm going to tell you, you're going to get out of this situation. And again, going back to what Bill realized when he was initially working with people was that if you argue for one side, a client is likely to defend the other. It's just part of the human nature, being able to push. And the roots go a little bit deeper in that when we're confronting someone and basically the message is that what you're doing is wrong, not right. I'll tell you how to do it. As humans, we're likely to be like, wait, no, wait, and that's how we get argument for the other side. Next slide. So people are generally better persuaded by the reasons which they have themselves discovered than by those which have come in to the mind of the other. And this is by Blaise Pascal, and he was a 17th century, he was alive in the 1600s, mathematician, philosopher, inventor. And I mean, when you hear it, it makes sense, right? Like when you ask people, what do you think will help you? Be pretty shocked sometimes with the things people come up with that you're kind of like, oh, I didn't even think about that, but that's a really phenomenal idea. Next slide. So deep listening. Again, Bill Miller wrote a book all about listening. And when we listen deeply and openly, we help people have space to hear themselves. Because again, going back to the phrase that I just read, in that what's really powerful is when people put their voice to arguing why they need to do something, which is all about change talk, which we're going to talk again, very, very important in MI. And when we, again, don't set up that argument about, oh, you should do this, then they'll begin to voice their agreement for change rather than us. Because nobody's in the dark. Yeah, no, that's fine. No, that's great. No, that's fine, Summer. Yeah. Nobody's in the dark. People know why they're sitting across from you most of the time. And again, in working in healthcare and, someone comes to me and they're, they've got COPD or whatever, and they're smoking and they're like, I know. I need to stop smoking. It's not that they don't know. Of course they know. And then if we begin our conversation about, well, tell me what you know about that and what do you think? And then, oh my goodness, can spend 5 hours for them being able to recite what 20 different people have told them about smoking. And then asking them how they feel about smoking, they might tell you some of the nuggets that will support the doorway into being able to work on stopping that. If, and only if, they decide that's what they want to do. So these are the 4 tasks. And this was changed in the 4th edition. It was used to be called the 4 processes of MI. And the reason why they changed the word to tasks is because Bill was saying that he wanted it to seem more fluid. Rather than process kind of implies it just goes in order, but that these things move back and forth. It's never such a strict system of first this, then that, then this, then that. And we're going to talk about all of these. And so the first point is engaging. This is about truly being able to sit with someone and say, hey, what's going on? What brings you here today? And they can look at you sideways. What do you mean? You're my parole officer. What do you mean? What brings me here today? I'll tell you know what I mean? But it changes the flavor. Focusing. All right. So what do you want us to focus on today? I don't know. Okay, you've got no idea what you're doing here. Well, since we've got to sit here together for the next 20 minutes, what would you like us to chat about? All of a sudden, something comes up. Evoking, which is about really supporting them to come up with what needs to be different. And it is magic sometimes that if you give people space, and then they'll say, okay, all right, well, maybe what I'd like to do is I wake up every morning with this kink in my neck and I'd like to feel better about it. Well, let's talk about that then. And then planning. So at the end of it, it would be about, okay, so what are you going to take away? What's going to be your one little step that's going to make a difference in the direction you want to go? You know what? I'm going to put 2 pillows under my neck. All right, cool. Yeah. I'm being very simplistic, as you guys can understand, but this is kind of giving you the vibe for it. Next slide. Style. Again, be curious, present, listen, and reflect. And we're going to talk a lot about the reflecting in a moment. So next slide. These are some of the main strategies of MI. So OARS, favorite acronym. Next one, we'll talk about change talk. And finally, about reflective listening and offering reflections. Next slide. So OARS. So the O stands for open-ended questions in order to understand an individual's perspective and their level of motivation. Next gooby thing, it'll move it. Yeah. Affirmations, recognizing the individual's efforts and strengths. Everybody comes to us with things that they've accomplished and things they're proud of, even if they can't see it themselves. It's always a very informative question to ask people what they think their strengths are. And again, a lot of times we come up with a blank, but it's being able to reflect to them some of the things that you might have heard about the life they've lived. And in full transparency, I've spent a lot of time working with veterans. And so I can confidently, when they're like, no, I've never been able to accomplish anything. My answer is always like, so you didn't have to go through boot camp? And then they'll be like, and then I'll be like, I would have not lasted 15 minutes, maybe 13 minutes, And then you start laughing and they're like, okay, well, what got you through that, and all this. Reflective listening, deepening understanding. And so if I were to follow the same line of questioning, I'd be like, well, how did you get to boot camp? And what was it like for you? And then just then the door opens. And so people are able to reflect, and you're listening for some values. You're listening to what motivates them. You're listening to how they got through difficult things. Next slide. Summary. This is a really big part of looking at an MI encounter, is that we always end with a summary. And again, we'll talk about it a little bit more, but we take it a little step further. We ask people, well, what did you get out of this? What did you get out of our encounter? What's your takeaway? And then you're able to offer some reflections and say, and I heard X, Y, and Z. And then offering some reinforcements in change talk, which we'll talk about what that is. Next slide. So what are open-ended questions? Okay, the O, what is this? We ask how, what, why. Open-ended questions can't be answered with a yes or a no. So it's different to say, did you drink last night? Or you can say, oh, how did you manage your stress last night? Two very different answers you're going to get. And it also sets a different precedent. You can imagine how somebody would meet with you, like, did you drink last night? Or a mom that's got like all these kids and you're like, well, how did you deal with the stress last night? What was going on? Any questions about that? I always like to say a word. This doesn't mean that you never ask a yes or no question in MI. People are like, what? I'm going to just offer a little word about MI. So let me give a little bit about background on this. So MI, very much, like I said, started out as a very homegrown theory, and then over the years became a very formalized technique. and in such a way that lots of coding has been developed. So anybody that's gone through any MI trainings knows that people code, which means they listen to your recordings and your interactions and they check box, what of this is this? How many open-ended questions versus closed-ended? And it's not a technique to be punitive in any way, but it's just to help us get in touch with how we frame questions. Because we're like, oh yeah, I wanted to ask these questions. I want to understand more. But even the way questions are presented make a difference on the type of information we get back. Next slide.
Hey, Linda. This is Summer. So I don't see any questions, but I did want to make a quick comment. When in the previous slide, when you were talking about strengths and kind of understanding or celebrating, someone's strengths or what they've done. I remember years ago, my therapist asked me to come up with a list of my strengths and that was my homework assignment for the next session. And I remember frantically Googling, like, what are a person's strengths? I could not think about what it was for me. So I think it's really important and really helpful for people to understand that, yeah, everyone has strengths. You just sometimes have to be reminded of them.
No, thank you for that example, Summer, because it's so true. It's when we talk about being reflective in MI, we're going to talk about it. We as human beings don't walk around being reflective on ourselves, right? And sometimes just even understanding why we do the things that we do, or why do we think the way we do, and that being able to get in touch with it. It's like, you ask anybody, do you have values? Oh yeah, of course I've got values. What are your values? Honesty, kindness, no problem, right? But I mean, it's like you can get the Googled thing. Then it's like, well, what about personally for you? Or who made you who you are? What's the integrity that you want following you around in your life? And it is really important, your point, Summer, in that people don't know the answers when we ask this. And that's where MI is so magical, in that you create the space. Well, let's figure it out together. Now that you're hearing what my vibe is, like if I go back to my example with the veterans and I say, okay, now that you know where I'm going with it, let me ask you again. What are some of your strengths? What's helped you get through hard times? And then all of a sudden, more things come up, like, well, I quit smoking 15 years ago. Tell me about that. Oh my God, it was so hard. What led you to make that decision? Well, my dad died of, lung cancer. So that had a really profound effect on you. Well, yeah, I've got 3 kids. I don't want my kids to have me die. Okay, so just a couple of sentences and we see what's important. And we see a strength. Okay, next slide. Affirmations. This is another really important part of MI. Again, in line with what we were talking about, we talk about their strengths, their past successes, their future hopes. All of these open the door for people to be able to think outside feeling limited. It is not about cheerleading. And I'm going to be really honest in that got trained in MI in 2011. And there are times when I really want to cheerlead for people. They'll be like, oh my God, I did this. And it was like, wow, that is so cool. I think that's awesome. All right. It comes out of my mouth. It does. And it's okay. But the reason why we say avoid using I and use you is because at the end of the day, it's not about the I. It's not about us. You are so excited to be able to tell me that you had no dessert last week. That would open the door differently than, I think that's so cool. Dead silence. Very different. Another thing that I don't have listed here, but MI is very much about and, not but. And so any of us that have been trained in MI are like, I can't say but, you want to lose weight, but it's hard for you. You love having treats and you want to lose weight. Very different statement. We'll have some more examples about that as we go along, though. Next slide. So here we go. So in MI, reflections are divided, reflective statements. So these are the things that we say, and reflections are guesses about what somebody means. And it's okay to make a guess. MI is always okay with us pushing that envelope, making a leap, because when we've created that partnership and we're meeting people with compassion, they don't have any problems telling us when we're wrong. And that's okay, because we're not mind readers, right? It's all about being able to share information and get things out. So simple is, one that also gets check marked when you're going through MI coding. And it's about just basically repeating what the person says or rephrasing it. Complex, which is the one that everyone is working towards, is when you go to the emotions, you guess at underlying meanings, you talk about values, desire, and you are kind of a little bit on a digging exploration to figure out what really the person is saying. So here's some examples. I've tried everything and nothing seems to be working, so I don't know what to do. So a simple reflection would be, nothing has worked. And that in and of itself can open the door for someone. Yeah, man, nothing's worked. I don't know about, versus you're stuck and are willing to try new things to change the situation. Can you see how that opens the door to be able to talk about options? Very, not saying can't say all the time, but unlikely will you get someone to say, no, 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 I don't want to talk about, changing anything. Obviously implying that someone's here for that. And next slide. This is one of my favorites. I don't know. We all like lop onto certain reflections at work. I love the double-sided reflection. It's just fun for me. So here's example. On one hand, you love eating sweets at night, and on the other hand, you want to be healthy, a healthy weight. So this honors the person where they're at, what they're feeling, and then opens the door, right? So if you said to somebody, you want to be healthy, but you love eating sweets, it's so simple. You've said it a certain way in which it's shutting down the opportunities. And when you end with what someone wants, then the next thing they said is leading them. Yes, we understand. We're leading them. It's again, a little tidbit. I was talking with my daughter-in-law who's a dietitian, and she's like really gotten into this. And she's like, wow, I talk to people differently. I don't tell them that they have to stop this, that, and the other. And I said, I know. She's like, wow, it just opens a door to people to talk about food and why they eat the way they do. And I'm like, yeah, obviously, you know what, fine. How many years later do people listen? But this is where we're at. So next slide. Summaries. As I said, this is a really important part of closing the encounter in motivational interviewing. And we start with, what is your biggest takeaway? Because sometimes it's amazing what people will say. We might think that we understand what the whole session was about or the encounter was about, and then they'll come up with something in, again, window into them. That's what it's about. Then you can summarize the big picture. Came in today because your doctor told you need to lose weight. You're not really excited about this, but we really talked about how it's really exciting for you to be able to find some new recipes that would shift some meals that you're eating and maybe for your family, whatever. And then we always end with, did I get it all? Or did we get it? Is that all of it? Anything? Did I miss anything? Why? Because yet again, after we invite people to put stuff on the plate and we give the plate back to them, they might decide they want a couple more things on the plate. Next slide. We always listen for change talk. Change talk is another very big buzz phrase in MI. So what is change talk? We have another fun acronym, thanks to MI. Darn cat. So darn cat stands for, the D is for the desire to change, A is for ability to change, R is for the reasons to change, and N is for the need to change. And then the cat is when we can help people get to the commitment to change. So again, this is not necessarily all happening in one encounter. Initially, we are really listening to the D quite a bit. Like someone comes in, again, if we're saying, an example like now, exercise more, like where's that coming from? Tell me about why you want to exercise more. Well, I don't want to exercise more. Okay, so this is not important to you to, no, it's not important for me to exercise more. Well, what brought you here? Well, I want to lose weight. My doctor said that I have to come talk to you to lose weight. Ah, okay. So you really want to lose some weight, and it's not going to be through exercise. So let's figure out what might be able to help you get to where you want to go. So the desire is not necessarily always what someone comes with or you've been told. Ability, we're going to go through all of it. So next slide. What we meet is ambivalence. So ambivalence is simultaneously wanting and not wanting to do something. It's totally a normal part of the change process, pros and cons, and 90% of everything we walk around with, there's some ambivalence. It comes up as actually the central barrier to change. Situations around us are always changing, and yet our own personal transformations dictate how we experience life. You know, it's just like, again, two people, there's a really fun experiment that we do in that put on a video and have people watch it, and everybody can pick out different things that struck them in the video because we're all different. We're all watching the same video. Nothing's different, but we take things away differently. So when we get in touch with our inner voices, and understand the filters in which we see the world and we see ourselves, then we can advocate for shifting some of these views, maybe thinking of new possibilities, and looking at how we would envision growth, if and only if it was where we wanted to go. Next slide. So again, ambivalence, feeling two ways about a thing, so much lack of motivation. Someone's get it right on the chart. Oh, they're not motivated. They've got lack of motivation. It's ambivalence in disguise. You know, again, somebody that just comes out of after having a heart attack knows that they probably need to quit smoking, maybe lose some weight, whatever, you know. It's not that they don't know that. It's that both sides are there for them. And again, back to the MI theories, if you argue for one side, ambivalence is ready to defend the other. Right there. Any questions about this? Next slide. So now we're going to talk about how we do offer information, guidance, and advice. So I have to be so honest. When I first learned about MI and it was like the permission asking, is it okay if I share some information? I was like, what kind of a ridiculous thing is that? Someone's coming in here, they want me to give them. What do you mean I'm asking them permission to share something? And man, I'm the biggest convert, you know, because it's such a simple thing. And a lot of times people will say, of course I want to hear. But that tiny exchange gives power to the person that we're talking to. I'm not just talking at somebody, I'm creating a partnership. Just as likely as we would be, like, you know, we're out there just about to get in the car. If someone rolled up on us and say, hey, you want some advice on how to keep your car clean? I'd be like, where did you come from? Even if I was just going to the car wash, right? Where did you come from? I didn't invite you into this. I know it's a crazy example, but it's real. All right, next slide. So MI has swung around many different acronyms about how to do this information giving and gathering. And so we're going to go over a few of them. So the current rendition is the EPE. This is what the MI world's talking about. Elicit, provide, elicit. So first we elicit current understanding. What do they already know? Tell me, what do you know about quitting smoking? Next, buzz. Then we provide information. Okay, so you know that being able to cut down smoking is going to have a huge impact on your lung functioning. Would it be all right if I shared some information? And I'm making this very simple. You would know about the person a little more, find out about them. So, you know, what have you heard about some of the smoking aids that we could offer you? And then let them talk and they'll be like, oh no, man, I've heard about this gum. And I've heard that people are, I mean, I've got friends that have been chewing this gum for 30 years. I don't want to get addicted to gum. What's the point in that? Okay, so you understand about the gum. What about some other options? Yeah, I'm curious about the patch, but I don't know. Is that like a birth control patch or what? And then you open up the discussion. You share what you know. Well, let me tell you what I know about the patch. This is what it can do. This is the dosage, blah, 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 blah. And then elicit again. So next slide. Tell me, what did you understand from what I said? And then you're listening to see what really resonated with the person. If I offered gum, patch, cold turkey, hypnosis, guided imagery, what are they taking? What is it that they're really excited about? I didn't know that you could do guided imagery for smoking. I want to hear more about that. Oh yeah, we have a lot of people on staff that are experts on guided imagery, and they've had really good success in helping people kind of get in touch with being able to cut down, and stop. Next slide. So again, more EPEs because MI likes EPE. Evoke, provide, elicit. So evoke and explore their own ideas and brainstorm. So in the last slide, we talked about like how we can elicit, like, tell me, what do you know about it? And then we could say, explore it a little bit more. Like, well, what have you seen other people do? Or what have you seen on social media? Lord help us, right? What's coming out there? And again, what you're doing is before you're planting seeds, you're inviting them to tell you what's struck in their mind. Again, the provide information, resources, same thing. Ask permission. Would it be okay if I told you about the resources we have? Very rarely does someone say no, but sometimes they do. Sometimes they say, you know what? This has really taken me down a very thought-provoking path, and I need to think about this more. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm here for you. And when you're ready to hear about resources, I'd be happy to work with you to make a plan on what would be best. And then again, elicit, we focus on the change talk, the why, the how, we give feedback and get ideas for action. So again, if we're feeling the vibe that someone's closer to in the theory of change, that they're getting kind of used to preparation or action, then we can talk about it. Would you be open then to thinking about some small steps you might be able to take within the next 2 weeks towards this? Again, it's not what, it's would you like to, and then the what. So again, we are very excited as helping professionals to move people along on this continuum. And it's okay to understand that enthusiasm. And sometimes that makes a big difference for people. And we can rein ourselves in too. MI is also very forgiving when you're like, oh, I just asked you a closed-ended question and people are looking at you like, what? Like, oops, sorry, you don't get it. It's all right. Basically, and then you switch. It's okay. We're human too. But it's important to be in touch with ourselves so we know what we're responding to. And then finally, of course, explore why the veteran, oops, this is an old slide, but that's okay. That we changed this 20 times. Why the individual wants to make a change, provide resources, engage them in the next step. So there we go. Any questions on this? Okay, so next slide. This is a colleague of mine in the motivational interviewing world where she made this really cute video about ask, offer, ask, and gave me permission to be able to share it during training. So Summer, I think you're going to put this one on.
Ask, offer, ask is an effective way to share information or give advice. Using ask, offer, ask complements the spirit of motivational interviewing by honoring the person's autonomy while helping them to explore the possible actions or inactions available to them relating to a situation or behavior they're ambivalent about. Ask, offer, ask also honors the partnership aspect of the spirit by collaborating as two experts. The helper may be an expert in their field who's qualified to give information. The person is an expert of themselves. They can decide whether they'd like to receive or even use the information you provide. As the name of the strategy implies, ask, offer, ask can be broken down into 3 stages. The first is checking in about what they already know and asking permission to give the information before you offer it. Next, offering is giving that information respectfully, clearly, and in small digestible amounts. And finally, the second ask is actually asking the person what they think of the information that you shared. Here's an example of what it might sound like in a conversation.
I really enjoy smoking, and I know I need to stop sometime. It's not good for me.
You've been thinking about this for some time. What have you been thinking about doing?
I don't know, really. I tried cold turkey in the past, and obviously that didn't work for long. I know there's gum and patches, but I'm not sure about them.
So you'd consider an aid to help you because you're not sure cold turkey will work again for you.
Maybe I might like to use something to help with the cravings, but then how do I stop using the aids? I have friends that are still chewing nicotine gum, and it's been years.
You don't want to be stuck with an aid forever. I'm wondering if we can discuss all the options that we know of and you can consider which might work for you. Would that be helpful?
Yes, I'd like to know more about the side effects and how long I'd have to use the aids.
I'll share some pamphlets containing helpful information with you. Some people have been successful with aids by consulting with their doctor when they are ready to stop the medication, while others make a plan for how they will wean off the aids. You can read and research more about these options, and we can discuss next time we meet. How would that work for you?
In the first stage, we have 2 options. Option 1 is asking permission to give the information and advice. Is it okay if we talk about? Would you like to know more about? Or the second option, we want to elicit what the person already knows. What do you know, or what have you been thinking about? Or, you seem to know a lot about this. I'm wondering if I could share some things that might be new to you. It's important to remember to pause and wait for the person to respond to your questions before diving in and giving the information. In the second stage, there are some important things to remember when we're offering information or giving advice. 1, make sure it's applicable to the person and it's focused on the present. 2, be careful not to persuade. Give the information in a neutral way. Remember, it's our intention to give information and not change the person's mind. 3, focus on 1 or 2 key pieces of information for the person to consider and avoid overloading them with too much. 4, use plain language, short sentences, and familiar words. Avoid jargon or professional terms that the person might not be familiar with. And when applicable, offer information using pictures, diagrams, or handouts. And finally, make sure you emphasize that it's their choice. Offer a menu of options and be careful to stay away from language that might be directive, like can't, might, have to, or should. In the last stage, we want to be sure that we continue to support their autonomy and choice for deciding what to do with the information we just shared. Depending on what we offered, we might ask questions like, what do you think about the information I just shared? Or how does this information relate to what you already know? What do you think you'll do with this information? Or what else might be helpful for you? What do you think about ask, offer, ask? How might this fit in conversations that you have when you want to offer your thoughts, advice, or information to someone? Like anything new, it might take some time to practice and get used to. Perhaps you'd consider practicing with a friend or a colleague. Notice what comes easy to you or what things you have to think twice about. Using the 3 stages are the best way for you to understand what types of questions and information statements come naturally to you. Being genuine and being yourself is the best way to be effective.
Thanks, Summer. Thank you, Vibes, to Amy for this great little video. Any comments about ask, offer, ask, elicit, provide, elicit, explore? Okay, next slide. So when we go down these roads of what, how, and why, the point is to really engage individuals to understand what would be supportive for them. So again, going back to an area that you'd like to change, what would you need in general? And then what would you need to feel supported in making the change? Something we don't usually ask people. How would you do it? Not, let me tell you how you're going to do it. That's what they're used to. I'm going to tell you how you need to do this. How would you do it? And this big one is critical. Why is this important to you now? And sometimes we hear that it's not. And then the conversation will become, so this isn't important to you right now. What is front and center? What is super important right now? What do you need to focus on? Next slide. So here's a sample, typical again, MI encounter. So opening the conversation, asking open-ended questions, negotiating the agenda, assessing readiness to change. We'll get to that in a moment. Exploring ambivalence, asking about next steps, and closing the conversation with a summary. And again, it can seem really kind of silly to say, hey, you're here meeting with me. What can I do for you today? I mean, what can you do for me today? I don't have it up here, but there's a great video by Steve Rolnick. And he's meeting with a guy to talk about weight and, being healthy. And this man walks in and he is pissed that the appointment's starting 45 minutes late. So when Steve opens the conversation, it's really about that, about understanding. And then when they kind of go through it and then he says, yeah, well, wondering if you'd want to talk about your weight. And the guy looks at him and is like, are you kidding me? You took me in 45 minutes too late and now you want to focus on my weight. It's so real. And how he just really miraculously gets the guy to say that he would like to make some changes and he doesn't have any time and he'd be willing to come back if only he's been seen on time, in which case Steve says, well, let's make sure you're the first appointment of the day. And I'm sorry, I said he was a psychologist, but he's a physician too. So it's like, yeah, if you've got somebody waiting 45 minutes to see you because of whatever's happening in life, there was an emergency or whatever, you can't walk in and expect someone not to be having an experience about that. And when you're able to honor what's going on with them, then you open the door to be able to honor lots of things in them. Next slide. This is another big special part of MI. It's called the MI ruler, also known as the readiness ruler. And this has been used and researched so many times in order to get in touch with people really being able to find ways that things work for them. So the first thing is from 0 to 10, how important is this for you? And what you're doing here is really gauging where someone is at. Sometimes you'll get an 8 or a 9, and then you can talk about this is really important. You're ready to make some changes for this. Sometimes they say 3 or 4, and then you're like, yeah, so on the scale, this is not really doing much for you. And there's all kinds of different tricks in working with the ruler. Some people go forward. What would it take you to be a 6 if you're a 3? Some people go backwards. Well, why didn't you say 1? Well, I mean, it's, not like it's not important at all. It is kind of important. And then you start talking. How confident are you that you can make this change? Again, 0 to 10. Really inviting people to be honest, because basically it's going to work for you. So, I'm an 8. I can totally do this. I'm totally going to go and I'm going to walk 15 minutes 3 times a week. Totally confident I can do this. Or 2, I can't go to the gym. No way. I wish I could go to the gym, but I can't. I'm not confident about. Well, okay. So the gym isn't something that you're feeling confident you could work on. What could you see maybe being not the gym or something that you might feel might move you to a 6? And then how ready are you to do it? This is magic too. The truth. I'm a 2. Okay, so this is not a big priority to you right now, which is an amplified reflection, which we didn't talk about, which is goes down a little bit more. An amplified reflection is when you exaggerate what they're saying. So you're 2, oh yeah, so there's no way. You're just really not ready to do that. Not at all. That's amplified in the opposite direction. And they're like, well, wait a minute. I mean, I didn't say that. I mean, I guess I could be a little bit ready, but what does that mean? Tell me about that. And then you get them going. Any questions about our ruler? Lots and lots of different techniques and ways to use the ruler. Sometimes you use only one question, sometimes you use all. Lots of tools under the ruler. Next slide. So why use MI? What is the benefit? Again, I want to reiterate that MI itself is not a theory. It really comes from humanistic psychology to help us know how to sit with people and why it works. It's person-centered. So when we talk about what's important for the individual, it opens the door for them to be able to see what the possibilities are for them to do. It's forward-focused. So unlike therapy, not saying that past and history doesn't have an impact, but we don't focus on that. We focus on where somebody wants to go. Or if they're comfortable where they're at, that's okay too. We meet them where they're at and ask if there is anything that they might want to do different. And the shared agenda, so that we have a mutual agenda. My agenda isn't to get you to get off the street. I have to own that. If your agenda is not that, it's not my agenda. Even though I know, right, that it's better for you, but I don't. So it's really about being very honest about having a shared agenda. And the agenda changes. It would be like, so today, our agenda was to really talk about what would be, a decent number of calories for you to consume. Not how, not what you're going to eat, not eat. We just talked about what would be a good number for you. And then what MI can come alongside any other modalities, treatments, protocols. Again, it's not a way to get people to do something. It's about really supporting people in where they want to go. So whether you're using it in mental health, whether you're using it in the criminal justice system, whether you're using it, like I said, MI, it's called Milo. It's MI in leadership and organizations. If you're using it to have agencies operate better, coworkers to get along more, you don't throw out all the years and decades of theories on executive leadership. What you do is you invite MI as a platform in which all of this is offered. So CBT for all the mental health professionals out there, DBT, anything, it's MI can come alongside all of it. It's not a, one or the other. Next slide. So motivational interviewing, I'm sure I didn't say anything to anybody that was like, oh, it's intuitive. That's easy. I can sit and listen to people and get it. It takes training, practice, feedback, mentorship, skill building. MI is very much about, like I said a moment ago, coding. So numerous tapes of our encounters with mentors, and you listen to them and you're like, I just did a very close, ended question. It's ongoing. So it's all of this and repeat. And I'll be honest that one of the best things is to circle yourself in a community that, is continually working through this. And does that mean every single interaction I do is with MI? No. Sometimes it's not appropriate to use MI when things are happening. And that's important for everyone to decide as far as how these techniques can be used. Next slide. Questions. That's it for my slides. So I'm not going to be presenting anymore. And I'd love to hear questions, thoughts, reflections. It's a lot.
Yeah, it was really helpful, Linda, and really insightful. It made me also realize how much my own therapist is using motivational interviewing on me. But that's what we need.
Yeah, I mean it's a shift, and I think that there is a shift in the world of healthcare, helping whatever way it comes out, and um that honestly, compassion and listening to people and really being able to see where they're at goes way further than any other special information we can offer them. It's like people walk in with pounds and pounds of messages they've gotten throughout their life about like what they've been doing wrong, or how, you know, there's way better ways to do whatever they're doing, and being able to unpack that and say, well, where are you underneath all of those pounds of information? Is people are just like, whoa, really? Yeah. I mean, I don't live your life, and I inside of you and the ins and outs of what's going on or what led you to get here, but I can certainly be your partner in understanding where you want to go. And sometimes people can't even go that far, and that's okay. It's humbling. It's humbling to sit with people in this way.
Absolutely. I know one of the questions, Linda, that I remember hearing before this was not just how do you approach this in like a with a client relationship, but how do you use it with your own team as well? Like if you're supervising team members or even your peers, is there a way that it's possible to use that to use MI for that?
I mean, absolutely. So again, it's using MI sounds like we're trying to do something, right? So if we look at it as like a foundation of how to sit with somebody, like if there's a coworker that's being challenging, we might know why they are, right? We have an opinion on why they're being challenging, but do we? And so being able to talk to them and see what is their perspective, and what they can come at us, and in leadership I've heard people say, well, I thought I was supposed to be that assertive, that was going to show that I'm committed to the group. In the meantime, I'm thinking everybody is sick of you. Like, that's not working. It's not working, right? But the person's not trying to be off-putting. They're following a narrative in their mind that we're not understanding, and perhaps there's a mismatch. And so we don't say, oh, your narrative is a mismatch. We say, okay, you want it to come across as really knowing your stuff and really kind of like a take charge person. I'm wondering if you would be open to some feedback on how maybe this group might take that. I mean, or how this group might want to hear that. So again, you're appealing to what the person wants. One of the other famous ones is like someone that's always late to work, and the supervisor is like, I really like you, but I cannot write this review without documenting that you're late every morning. And then a whole story unfolds. You can go on and on and on about how bad they feel and how much they want to be in time, but it would be like, wow, I'm wondering if maybe we could brainstorm what would help you get to work on time. And then the door opens in a different direction. So it's not about you being inauthentic. You've got to be real with what your expectation is. You can't not put a review down the way that it is. And you can be very honest about that and say, I have to do that. But let's brainstorm. How would you like your review to be? What would you like to see for you? I don't want that on my record. Yeah, let's talk about it then. How can we make it different? Maybe do we do a probationary period? We put this on pause and this and that. Yeah. And then sometimes there are difficult decisions in which have to happen, and you never give up your own integrity and what you need to do. And so what comes to mind is I had to let someone go once, which is never a joyful thing to do, right? And yet I had to, because this individual was behaving in ways that were going to be that were going to be a conflict for the organization I was working for. And so I was really transparent. And I was like, these are the reasons why this isn't going to work anymore. And, really open to discuss kind of, maybe what you'd like to do in the future or what direction you would want to go. MI works when you have to have tough conversations because you come at it from where are you at? What's your understanding about what we're having to do right here? And how can we move to a place that's going to be okay? You don't sacrifice what's okay for you. If you have to do a report, if you have to write something, if you have to let someone go, you can't just say, oh, you know what, you're right. You're such a sweetheart. I'm not going to fire you now. I changed my mind, right? No, it's not like that. But it's still about really honoring this person, respecting their autonomy, and then being able to get done what needs to be done.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, no, and someone had a question about how do you talk to someone that doesn't listen when spoken to? Well, that's just it. I mean, MI is not magic. We can't, in the MI circle, we talk all the time about how we cannot use this on our children or our spouses because we try all the time, but it never works. So can't make anybody do anything. And you have to be real, right? And the people that are in your lives that love you and like all my MI people. And if I start to say something in an MI tone, they'll be like, yeah, I'm not talking to you right now because you're just MIing me, So it's ethical and we can't make anybody do anything. So just like same kind of thing. Don't want the car salesman to be all about like, oh, tell me how your life could be better if you own this Porsche. Tell me about that, Certainly that's going to evoke a lot of wow, I'd feel good and never mind what my bank account says, but they've got their own agenda. So, yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions? You can raise your hand or just jump in, put something in the chat box.
Did anybody feel like I was going to
Oh,
ask, anybody feels like they're in an environment in which this would not be supportive, this type of kind of working with people? And it's okay, because it's always important to kind of understand how we can weave this into anything that we do.
It all sounds like useful information. My biggest problem is shutting up and listening.
And that's kind of like one of such an important guiding philosophy that we have as helpers, right? Like we want to come to an encounter with someone with important information, being able to offer guidance to them that can help them. This is the philosophy that we come with. And that's important to own for ourselves. And we don't throw it out the window. Again, MI is very much about being able to share, but it's about how we share and allow people to let us know where they're at before we come in with our thoughts.
Yeah, I copy that. I'm very much a fixer. I'm really good at fixing things, but sometimes just listening does a little more than trying to fix. I gotta use like pressure points and stuff like that to like keep my self tame sometimes.
And MI always says that when that is your value and you're coming at it, you communicate that with the person that you're with, and sometimes you can even say it, this is what you know about yourself. And you can say, I'm here to partner with you and definitely want to hear what's going on with you. And I love being a fixer. So let's brainstorm together. You don't, that's you and that's what you're bringing. And that can be really, when we're genuine, it's so comforting to people, because the hardest thing for me was to shut up, and to get to be concise, because I love to talk. and I love to dialogue and I love to connect, but that's me, and so learning to rein that back, I'm probably still on that pathway. It's not over yet.
Well, Linda, I want to thank you again for joining us today. We've had a couple of comments in the chat box from people who've said how much they enjoy this. And someone asked if this will be on our resource page. Yes, we are recording this so that we can post it on our resource page. It will be there in the next day or two, so you can keep an eye out for it. Meanwhile, we do want to ask everyone to consider completing our survey. We do this at the end of every virtual assembly and learning circle so that we can hear from you, like what you liked about this, what you didn't like. It helps us it helps inform the future of the curriculum as well. So please take a few minutes to answer it. I think one randomly selected respondent will get I think a $5 gift card to Starbucks. So maybe that's a little bit of motivation for the responding to the motivational interview survey. And I'll put and I think we've got a Survey Monkey as well, but that will be it's the same questions. We'll send that out after today. But the QR code on your screen will also take it. We'll take you there. And really just want to, Linda, thank you again for your time, for your expertise.
Thank you for having me, Summer. I mean, this is something that I feel, like I was trained very analytically as a psychologist, which is very, very specific way. Just been a wonderful, foundation for me. But I'm definitely, I've bought this, hook, sink, and liner, that it's just a really wonderful way to be working with people.
Well, the passion comes through.
All right, good. Thank you. Well, thanks for having me, everyone.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We're going to leave the survey open, but stop the recording. And just again, thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And have a great holiday season, and we'll see you in 2026.